My brother has always known how to fill a room, not in the way that makes people feel warm, in the way that makes the air feel thinner. He walks in, and somehow the furniture rearranges itself around him. Conversations pivot. My mother smooths her hair. My aunt laughs a little too quickly at something he says. And I stand near the window, holding a glass of something cold, watching it happen the way I've watched it happen my entire life. I'm the one who scheduled her cardiology appointments. I'm the one who drove 40 minutes each way every other Tuesday so she wouldn't have to take the bus. I'm the one who sat in the waiting room under fluorescent lights, reading 6-month-old magazines, while a doctor I'd never met before explained her medication adjustments to me, because my mother kept saying, "Just tell my daughter." She handles all of that. My brother showed up at Christmas and her birthday, sometimes Easter if he didn't have other plans. I never said anything about it, not because I didn't notice, but because I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't doing it for credit. I was doing it because she was my mother, and she needed someone, and I was there. That was enough. I made it enough. Her 70th birthday was my aunt's idea. A real celebration, she said. Not just cake at the house. A private room at Harlow's, the Italian place on Clement Street that my mother had loved since before I was born. White tablecloths, the good bread. Reservations for 22 people covering 3 generations of a family that mostly got along, or at least pretended to well enough to share a meal. I spent 3 weeks organizing it. The deposit, the menu selections, the dietary restrictions. My cousin Marcus is vegan now. My Uncle Ray can't have shellfish. My mother's neighbor Patricia keeps kosher. I made a spreadsheet. I confirmed the private room twice. I ordered a custom cake from the bakery on Irving that my mother had mentioned once, offhandedly, 6 months earlier. And I had written it down because that's what I do. I write things down. My brother texted me 4 days before the dinner. "Can't wait for Saturday. Should be great." That was it. No offer to help. No question about whether I needed anything. Just quiet confidence that Saturday would, in fact, be great. Because someone else would make it great, and he would show up and receive it. I typed back, "See you there." The night of the dinner, I arrived early to check on the room. The flowers I'd ordered were on the table. The cake was in the back with the kitchen staff. The server, a young woman named Diane, walked me through the evening's timeline and confirmed the champagne toast was set for 8 o'clock. Everything was exactly as I'd planned. My mother arrived with my aunt at 7, wearing the blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She held both my hands when she saw me and said, "You did all of this?" And I said, "We all did." And she squeezed my hands, and I meant it to feel simple, and it almost did. The room filled up. Wine was poured. My cousin's kids ran figure eights between the tables until someone redirected them with bread. The noise rose and warmed and turned into the specific kind of comfortable chaos that only exists when people have known each other long enough to stop being careful. My brother arrived at 7:40. He came in with his girlfriend, Petra, who I had met exactly twice and who was very beautiful and very quiet in the way that made it hard to tell if she was shy or simply uninterested. He hugged my mother for a long time. He kissed her cheek. He stepped back and looked at the room with this expression, satisfied, almost proprietary, like he was surveying something he built. "This is incredible," he said, to no one in particular. I watched my mother beam at him. I went back to making sure Patricia's gluten-free entree was flagged with the kitchen. Dinner moved the way good dinners do, slowly, comfortably, with second helpings and interruptions, and 3 different people telling stories about my mother that she claimed were exaggerated. My Uncle Ray gave a toast that ran 4 minutes longer than anyone expected, but ended sweetly enough that nobody minded. The table laughed. My mother pressed her napkin to the corner of her eye. I was watching Diane signal that the cake was ready when my brother stood up. He tapped his knife against his glass. The table quieted. "I just want to say something," he said, "before the cake comes out." He was smiling. The particular smile he has when he already knows how something is going to land. "Mom, you know I'm not great with words." He paused for the small laugh he knew would come, and it came. "But I want everyone here to know how seriously I take my responsibility to this family." He put his hand over his heart. which is why, a few weeks ago, I sat down with Mom and we made it official. I'm now the sole authorized signatory on her primary accounts, full financial oversight, so everyone can relax. He raised his glass toward my mother. She's taken care of. The table made a sound. Part awe, part applause, part the nodding of people who have just been told something that sounds responsible and generous and didn't think to examine it further. My mother was smiling, but it was a smaller smile, the kind she gets when she's not sure what just happened. I was very still. I thought about the Tuesday 2 months ago when she'd called me from the bank parking lot, confused, saying my brother had asked her to come in to update some paperwork, and she wasn't sure what she'd signed. I had told her I'd look into it. She'd told me not to worry. I'd made a note and then let the week swallow it because there were appointments to schedule and forms to file, and I told myself I'd follow up, and then I hadn't followed up, and now I was sitting at a table with 22 people while my brother accepted quiet congratulations for an arrangement I had known nothing about. Petra patted his arm. My aunt said, "Oh, how wonderful." My cousin Marcus looked at me across the table. He had known me long enough to read my face. He looked away carefully. I picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. I set it down. I looked at my mother, who was looking at her hands, turning her ring the way she does when she's trying to seem calm. I said, "Mom." She looked up. My voice was quiet. The people nearest to us heard me. The rest of the table was still buzzing with side conversations. "Do you remember when you called me from the parking lot on the 14th? You said you weren't sure what paperwork you'd signed." The table got quieter, the way rooms do when they sense something shifting underneath the surface of a conversation. My mother said, Yes, I remember. Did anyone explain to you what a sole authorized signatory means, what it means for your other accounts, for your ability to make withdrawals independently?" She was quiet. My brother said with a careful lightness, "This isn't really the time." "I talked to someone at the bank on Thursday," I said. "I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at my mother. I had a few questions about the process, about whether the account holder, you, Mom, was advised to have independent counsel present before signing, whether someone had explained the scope of what was being transferred." My mother said, "What do you mean, transferred?" My brother said, "Claire, I mean that full financial oversight isn't the same as helping Mom with her accounts." I set my napkin on the table. "It means you control them. It means she can't move her own money without your authorization. It means that the account she's had for 31 years, the one her mother left her money in, the one she used to pay for this dinner tonight." I paused just for a second. She can no longer access independently. The table was completely silent now. My mother had stopped turning her ring. She looked at my brother and said, "Is that true?" My brother said, "Mom, it's not, it's more complicated than that. I did this to protect you." "From what?" she said. It was 2 words, quiet and even, and they landed like a door closing. He started to explain, something about planning ahead, about making things easier, about what Dad would have wanted. His voice was still measured, still reasonable, but the room had changed and he knew it had changed and he couldn't change it back. My aunt, who had said how wonderful 4 minutes ago, was now looking at my brother with an expression I had never seen on her face directed at him before. Marcus was looking at the tablecloth. Diane appeared in the doorway with the cake and read the room and disappeared again. My mother said, "I didn't understand what I was signing." She said it to the table, not to either of us, like a fact she was stating for the record. My brother said, "Mom, I didn't understand it," she said again, more quietly. "I thought it was a convenience thing. I thought it was like adding you to the account. It's not reversible right now. There are steps we'd have to." "Every step can be reversed," I said. "I already asked. I have the number for the branch manager. I have the name of a bank-recommended estate attorney who handles exactly this kind of amendment. It takes 2 forms and a notarized letter from Mom confirming the change was made without full informed consent." I looked at him then, which, based on what Mom just said, is accurate. His jaw moved. Petra was looking at her plate. My mother looked at me for a long moment. Her eyes were wet, which she would hate, which meant she was past the point of managing it. She said, "You already looked into this." "On Thursday," I said. "Yes." She nodded, very slowly, the way she nods when she's deciding something. She turned to my brother and said, "I love you, you know that." Her voice was steady, "But I need you to sit down now." He sat down. The cake came out 10 minutes later, which gave the table enough time to exhale and re-find its footing. My aunt started a different conversation. The kids reappeared. Someone asked Marcus about his new job, and he answered at a length that the situation seemed to require. My mother blew out 70 candles while we sang to her, and she laughed and said the smoke was getting in her eyes, and I stood next to her with my hand on her back and felt the tension in her shoulders. How much she was holding, how much she'd always held, how much she'd handed to people without always understanding what she was handing over. My brother left before dessert was finished. He hugged my mother at the door. She hugged him back. She said, "Call me tomorrow." He said he would. I don't know if he did. That's not my part of the story. What I know is that the following Monday, my mother called me at 8 in the morning and said, "I made an appointment, Wednesday at 2. The branch manager and the attorney. Can you come?" I said, "I'll drive." She said, "I know you will." There was a pause, and she said, "I've always known you would." I didn't say anything for a moment. Outside my window, the fog was still sitting over the rooftops the way it does in the morning, low and gray and going nowhere fast, and I stood there with the phone against my ear and let the words settle somewhere they could stay. We got to the bank at 20 minutes to 2. We sat across from a branch manager named Dottie, who had kind eyes and a very organized desk, and who walked my mother through every line of the document she'd signed 6 weeks ago. My mother asked questions, real questions, the kind that told me she'd spent the weekend reading about it. Dottie answered all of them without condescension, which I appreciated. The notarized letter took 11 minutes. My mother signed her name at the bottom with the particular decisiveness she has when she's made up her mind about something, the same way she'd signed my permission slips, my college applications, the hospital paperwork, everything that had ever required her signature on my behalf, and handed it across the desk. Dottie said, "We'll process this by end of business Thursday." My mother said, "Good." We went to the cafe next door afterward and split a piece of lemon cake and didn't talk about my brother at all. We talked about her neighbor, Patricia's new dog, and a documentary she'd been watching, and whether I'd finally gotten around to repainting my hallway. I told her I hadn't. She told me the color I'd picked was wrong anyway. I laughed and it felt real, which is not always how laughing feels. Walking back to the car, she tucked her hand into my arm the way she used to when I was small, and we walked half a block like that without saying anything. Then she said, "I should have paid more attention." I said, "You pay attention to everything, not to this." "You trusted someone you love," I said. "That's not the same as not paying attention." She was quiet for a moment. "You're generous." "I'm accurate," I said. She squeezed my arm. We got to the car. I unlocked it. She got in and adjusted the passenger seat the way she always does, even though it hasn't moved since the last time she adjusted it. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot and merged onto Clement and drove west toward the park. And the fog had burned off by then, and the afternoon light was doing what it does in that part of the city in October, going gold and long and sideways through everything. My mother said, "Thank you for Thursday, for looking into it before I even asked you to." I kept my eyes on the road. "That's just what I do," I said, and she said softly, "I know. That's what I'm thanking you for."